Welcome back, everybody. In today's episode, Steve and I want to talk about confidence or self-confidence. Um, let's first look at the word. I'm not exactly sure about the origin, but con in many words means with or together. And fidens, the root is fide or fede, and that is Latin for faith or trust. And so when you have confidence, you are with faith. I like that you can also have self-confidence. So we often use the word confidence as having confidence in oneself, but it doesn't have to be that. You can have confidence in anything, like in another person or in a proposition. You can believe that something will happen, for example. Another thing I thought of was it helps to go into other languages. So in German, I will I will give you the literal translation of the German word for self-confidence, and that is self-consciousness. So it's kind of weird to think like, okay, you're conscious rather than trusting.
It
But
seems like it comes from it's one of my favorite terms is the I've spoken about before, but know thyself. You know that
mhm,
Greek I don't know mantra or whatever like
mhm,
phrasing you want to use that was like above the temple at Delphi.
mhm,
And if you have self-consciousness or self-awareness to the point where you know yourself, then you will have belief. In my you can then add. You're more likely to have, I guess, belief and um, knowing of yourself and what you can do, and therefore that should hopefully again that could even give you confidence.
yeah,
I guess just self-awareness in itself isn't probably enough, maybe because
right.
then
No,
doubts can creep in.
I understand what you're saying. You need to know a little bit about the thing or the person that you are putting your trust in. You don't know everything about them, right? Because confidence or faith is not knowing, not having a guarantee,
Yeah,
100% knowledge of the thing or person. There is some lack of knowledge. With full knowledge, there would be no room for trust.
yeah,
So if you knew that your bank would always be able to pay out the money you deposited, then you wouldn't need any trust in it, right? But I don't know if you followed the news.
yeah. I
Three
saw.
three American banks have crashed in the last few days. Um, the biggest one being Silicon Valley Bank, and it's interesting to see what is happening now with the confidence that people put in the banking system in general, and how the value in the crypto market has spiked because of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because it dipped a little bit, then it spiked, didn't it? Because
Yeah. So this is going off topic, but my passion is crypto. So
of course. Yeah, yeah,
in 2008, when banks crashed, and well, the housing market and then the banks with them, um, the central banks printed so much money because they argued the banks are so central to life. We need them to survive. We cannot let them go under.
yeah. Governments bailed them out and stuff. Yeah,
Right. And in reaction to that, a person whose identity is still a secret created the technology to um, to make a money system that has no central point, that is spread all over the planet so that it cannot be taken down by any authority.
yeah,
And that became Bitcoin. And obviously, it's a lot more than one person by now,
well, yeah.
to make it working. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but it might be the next safe haven for
Yeah.
people's money.
Yeah, like again, it's confidence in these, I guess, systems. Again, is a
Hmm.
fascinating thing. Like confidence in government, confidence in business, confidence in banks. Um, it just goes to show how, I guess, our existence is based upon belief and faith and
Yeah.
hope. Like almost everything we do, the starting point is, and we do it unconsciously because it's just part of our lives. But when you sit down and think about it, yeah, like everything we do really comes down to belief. Like those people that I guess succeed in the sort of the current definition of what success is, like monetary, property, all that kind of stuff, usually are the most confident. They're the most confident. They project an aura of confidence. But what's interesting, and this is what the point I want to get into, is the difference between confidence and arrogance, because that's something that has always intrigued
I think that's
me.
an important distinction. Yeah,
because my definition, I guess, of the difference, I'm sure it's written down somewhere more professional and more articulated, whatever, is that arrogance is a lie and confidence is truth. So let's say I know I'm a good writer. Like but I also know that I lack skills in my writing. I struggle with some of the technical aspects. I struggle with some of the like world building aspects. But I know that I'm good at what I do, and therefore that is confidence. I can take in the weaknesses, I guess, or the struggles, but also apply and project the good aspect to it, and therefore, because I'm projecting, I guess, one side of the coin, people will see that as confidence. They'll see, oh, Stephen, he's good at it. He can do this. Like that's awesome. Not knowing maybe that behind the scenes, I struggle in myself to have that confidence, maybe, but actually because I'm projecting it, and that's what people see, they will then have, I guess, confidence in me. Whereas arrogance is very much, oh, I'm the best. Yes, I'm the best. No one's as good as me. And that's a lie, because of course, unless you're, again, the exceptions are funny. Unless you are literally like, I don't know, Usain Bolt back in the day, where the best 100-meter sprinter, like in the world, then then you can claim that title and be like, you know what, I literally, out of all the people that have competed, I am the best. That is a statement of truth because of the evidence that is given. Whereas without the evidence, it's a lie, and therefore you have ego problems, and you're potentially, the arrogance is there. And cultures and societies have different definitions of them. That's what's beautiful and bizarre to me. Like in America, I always compare us with America, because we have in Britain, we have quite a strong relationship in terms of culturally to America. And I always am fascinated by the difference is that America has such an extreme level of confidence at times, to the point where it is, in my opinion, arrogance. And like delusion. But it actually builds a lot of confidence in in the population. They have that confidence at times. Whereas in Britain, oh my goodness, we're constantly like beating ourselves down and being like what I call false humility and false modesty, where we're like, oh, I'm not good at this, or we're scared to show ourselves, to have that confidence, because we're worried someone's going to think we're arrogant. And so I've always wanted a middle ground somewhere. I want a middle ground between what we have over here and what I guess America has culturally, where we can say we're good at something and be happy with, and not have to fear someone going, oh, you shouldn't say that because you're being arrogant.
Yeah, what you said about culture has reminded me of the time when I was a researcher. And as a researcher, you're always competing with other researchers in the form of publishing. So this is, everyone goes to their own lab, does their work. There is cross-cultural cooperation, but just generally everyone goes to their own place, and then once a year or more often they meet at a conference and then present their work, and the paper that they wrote about their work gets accepted if it is special, if they are in the top whatever, how many slots there are for papers. There might be five times as many submissions as there can be accepted papers. And I also noticed the trend that Americans really push hard to show how good they have been at something, and East Asians, for example, work just as hard, but don't present it in the same way. And I think in Europe we're actually already in the middle of the two, but you want to be in the middle of Europe and America, okay?
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Um,
I don't know what it's like in sort of, I don't know, I haven't, I guess, experienced much of mainland Europe's cultures as much as I have.
right.
So I don't know the like level of, I guess because it's too I guess let's go back a bit. I guess 'cause it's too contrasting. So again, Britain and America are very contrasting in their attitudes towards confidence. Therefore, it highlights it for me. Whereas I think, as you say, I think Europe actually probably already has that middle ground, and therefore I haven't noticed it because it is the middle ground already, maybe. But
Yeah,
again, like country to country will be vary. Like you know, I guess from the little I can tell from, again, kind of stereotyping here, but Spain they're pretty confident. Italians pretty confident. From what I've seen in different people I've met.
So you also mentioned the difference between putting up a front and actually being like what you call truth. And you already answered the question I was going to ask, which is how do you know if it is true or not? And you said there's evidence to show for it.
Yeah, well, there can be. Again, so often there's not.
Yeah, there are some areas where there's not a clear like numeric comparability, for example.
Yeah. Well, it's very difficult to quantify
Yeah.
because, again, it's a belief system. And let's say art, let's take art, for example. If you're an artist, and because art is subjective, like how can you quantify what's good and what's bad? It depends on what's the cultural norms at the time. It depends on what's popular. It depends on marketing. You could be the best person in the world at something or amazing at something, come up with all sorts of unique creative stuff, and that would impact humanity in so many lovely ways, and it never see the light of day just
Yeah.
because it's not the right, like, people haven't responded to it at that time or afraid of it because, again, it's a change if change is extreme. So yeah, it's very hard to quantify, I guess, confidence and self-belief, but it's an aura, in my opinion. Energy. I talked about this before. I think where I'm much more a believer in energies and auras these days. Like the impact we have on each other often, to me, feels like a physical force almost that we project. So
Some
like,
people are very sensitive to that. Yeah.
yeah. So like, for example, I guess we can get into some personal stuff here because good. Like, this is one thing about us, and it's really interesting about both of us. We're both very emotional people, but both very logical people. And I think we both show our logical side a lot and struggle to show, I guess, our emotional side at times these days. Like, I used to be very good at showing my emotional side. When it comes to things like confidence, like, I had none at various points in my life. Like, again, with depression, the mental health, the anxiety, especially, to even go outside, I was afraid at various points. Not necessarily, so again, whether it's chemical or mental health, and it's spiraled into chemical, where there is a fear response to going outside, and that is, I guess, it's the opposite of confidence. I guess fear. I guess maybe.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
sounds
One of the reasons I started this podcast was well, exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Just to do something that I'm afraid of. And I'm not usually comfortable doing this. I can be at times, if I get into it and I just forget all the narratives going on in my head that are trying to prevent me from achieving anything like this. I still don't know how to get to that state reliably. But this is an episode also about us and how we lack confidence. Because at least I've noticed with myself in this podcast, I think it comes totally automatically and naturally to myself and most other people that you put on a nice face when you are being watched. And even though this is just a camera watching me, I am, I guess, imagining people watching and listening to me. And so I try to appear strong and like an authority. But in my personal life, when I'm me, when I'm, the true me, I'm not interested in that at all. So that's a weird thing that is automatically happening. And I don't necessarily want it. I think yes, there are many advantages to coming across as an alpha male who you can rely on, and all you need to do is follow and do as I say.
Yeah.
But and I have a part of me that follows other men or like strong women who do that.
Strong women, yeah.
But that shouldn't be, in my opinion, that shouldn't be a reason to trust anyone, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not what it's not what our souls connect with.
Yeah.
Like we have to project ourselves as confident, or we feel we have to project ourselves as confident to reassure the audience that we know what we're talking about or whatever. And sometimes we don't. We're having discussions. Often we don't know the scientific stuff or the specific stuff. We just have thoughts, feelings about different topics, and that's what we're sharing.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, that human aspect, I think is so powerful, but it's so lost in society these days because we're scared to be vulnerable. Like we're scared to show our true selves for fear of being judged or being criticized, because most people will. If in all honesty, most people will. That's the hardest part about it, is that a lot of people, if we show vulnerabilities, will actually ridicule us or each other or people because they're afraid of emotions. So if they see other people showing emotions or being vulnerable, they're afraid of their own ones. So seeing other people do it, they then project that fear and therefore have to bring it down. Whereas some of the most brilliant conversations I've had, some of the most important art and media that I've consumed have been the ones that have shown that vulnerability, and genuine vulnerability, because it's difficult sometimes because there is a lot of fake vulnerability out there. Like there's a lot of clickbait and emotional triggering to try and just get likes and audiences and stuff. So it's very difficult at times. There's no difference. But I think one of my aims personally has been to try and let down my guard more in life recently, and let down my walls so that people know that it's okay that there is still that human connection, because otherwise we kind of become robots, in my opinion.
So letting down your guard means showing weakness.
But yeah, perceived weakness, I guess. Yeah, because again, I use perceived a lot these days, and it's like because of the way my brain has changed to how to look at different things, because again, weakness can be strength. So depending on your perspective, and that seems very nitpicky because I hope you don't think that's what I'm doing. Like that's the way I now define strength or weakness. It's perceived strength or perceived weakness, because actually, and this is a good segue, I guess, in some ways. I mean, we can still talk about the emotional aspect, but of how to build confidence, how do we still be vulnerable and still show who we are, but also be confident about that. And I guess showing it is confidence. That's what's interesting, is having that confidence to show weakness is confidence, or having that ability to show weakness is confidence. Anyway, but yes, that's kind of how I feel about it.
And the other thing about letting down your guard is making yourself available to ridicule and attacks.
Yes.
Right. So maybe that's one of the reasons it has taken me a long time to make progress there, because I'm afraid of the attacks. So I guess I need to become, I don't know, stronger, or
become accepting and let them wash over you. It's a phrase that I use. Like often they can feel like a tidal wave coming towards you, but you just kind of like, if you run from it, it just enables the fear response or strengthens the fear response. But if you stand there and if you run towards it, your force is going to hit its force. It's going to cause tension, like it's going to cause aggravation. Like if you try and fight against people that are fighting against you, it ends up just becoming a mess.
right.
So if you just stand there and just go, it doesn't affect me. I am who I am, and I love me for who I am, then that that for me, at least, that's for me how I've managed to kind of get through it. It still hurts at times, it does still hurt. I'm not gonna lie about that and try to pretend that when people like there is in Gloucester here, I won't go into the details, but there is a group of people that hate me.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have misunderstood things that I've done. They have not liked that I've called people out on their horrible behavior, and therefore they hate me for it. And that hurts to know that. But at the same time, I wouldn't have any other way, because actually at the end of the day, like I did the right things. I've done the right things. And that's the hard part, I guess, that we have to get to.
Okay. What you just said reminded me of something that I'm trying to understand right now. Something that Eckhart Tolle said. I'll give you the story to it as well, because it's kind of funny. So he sometimes responds to letters, and he read one letter of someone who says he is always tired because his wife snores at night, and she's next to him. And so he says you can either remove yourself from the situation, so in this case, sleep somewhere else, or you can suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, no, wait, or you can surrender. And I think he didn't actually forget the third option. I think he said it in this dramatic way to make a point, and that is that when you surrender to something, it is not the same as suffering from it. And this is where I'm still not clear on how to get there and how to do that. But when you talked about letting something wash over you, and allowing it to happen, that sounds a lot like what Eckhart meant by surrender. Do you have any experience with that?
I guess it's feeling the emotion and letting it like I guess when I feel vulnerable or upset, instead of just trying to ignore it, like I feel it. I go, you know what, this is human emotion. This is what I'm experiencing, and it's okay. And then I let it go. Then I go, okay, cool. It's almost like a shrug. It's almost like an indifference to it after you've experienced it. So I know that I've experienced it. I know that it's important for me to have. And then I just go, and again, that always wasn't the case. This is the thing, is that this has been a trained process. This isn't just like, oh, I've always known to do this. Like, gosh, at various points in my life, even the last, like, I was gonna say the last 5 years, which I guess to some people might seem like a long time, but to me isn't. Like, even the last 10 years, like if someone said something mean to me, I might be able to hold myself together for like a minute or two, but then have to leave and go and cry about it for like a day or two or a week or whatever. And again, that's okay. That's an emotional response, and in a way that has its own beauty, but also to me, that's too much of a response. It's not healthy to have that extreme response, because then it stops you from functioning as a human, I guess. Stops you functioning. So I try to kind of like either experience the emotion and the vulnerability there and then, or put it in a box, experience it later, and then little by little experience it. So one day I might think about it and feel about it, and that allows me to process over a period of time. But again, as I say, that took a lot of training and a lot of kind of self-cognitive behavioral therapy, self-awareness, just living life. Like, I'll be honest, like often we think about how can we gain confidence, or how can we what can we do? What theories can we read? What practice can we do? But often it's just by living life. Like the example I'll give is my anxiety back and the depression at one point, where I was ended up in a mental health hospital, talked about it before, left, and then was like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I do this? And I was like, okay, well, I found something, board games that I could go and do with people, and just little thing, socialize, and not be afraid to go outside. Eventually, like learn to be okay with being out here, to realize, to program myself to be like, there's nothing bad here. Like, there's nothing, like, what is this? It's like, it's just people being people. And over months and years of just doing that, I can now, for example, on Sunday, run a group of 35 people board games, get them all organized into groups, chat to them, socialize with them, and there's still a bit of vulnerability inside me, but the action has allowed me to, and focusing on the, I guess, perceived positive energies, the happiness that comes from it, the joy from seeing people interacting and getting and building their own confidences and their own like ways to overcome their struggles by just having some time with people.
So you spent all that time learning to deal with conflict, negative emotions, negative situations.
The vulnerability.
Do you ever feel like you'll only ever be able to deal with small situations because life is not long enough to build up enough strength to deal with really big situations? Like, at least this is one of my thoughts, and I know it's kind of a negative one, but I have such huge ambitions and I'm so limited, similar to what you have been describing, that I feel discouraged, and maybe that keeps me from even trying to master small things.
Okay. Well, you spoke about the podcast and stuff, and how that's got you to the stage where you still you can talk about things in a vulnerable way. You can talk about your beliefs and belief systems, and I think again, perceived differences where actually the skill is exactly the same. It'll feel different. Like, let's say you had to stand up in front of 1,000 people in person. I have again trained myself to try to see that it's not any different. So for me, you and me just talking now, to suddenly I had to go and then talk to a crowd of, again, 1,000 people. Same thing. Yeah, I'm not getting the feedback as such. It's not, but it's the confidence. I mean, not necessarily the dynamic, but the confidence to do it. You already have that confidence because you can do this. Like that. Like that's my perspective.
Let's talk more about perception. You brought up the word perceived several times.
A lot of times, yeah,
and
that's a good idea.
It is important. I think we live in a virtual world most of the time, and by that I mean we don't ever find out what is actually possible. We just believe that we cannot do something, and therefore it is true for us, or in our illusion, in our mind, in our belief system, and therefore we never attempt it. But the only reason to know what is real, whether we can do this thing or not, is to try to do it. And even then
there's a perception on whether we succeed or not that then stops us, or means that we fail or not. It's us, it's all us.
Yeah,
like it's all us. Like,
and it's so virtual, it's so just imagined.
Yeah.
Or when you say perceived, that's such an interesting word, because it has seeing in there. I mean, not literally, but perception. Another word that has perception is conception. So how do you conceive of something? That's to me is even more subjective, because it's just a concept in your head. It's not even something that you see. But you know how our dreams are visual, and maybe this virtual world that I'm trying to describe is also visual.
Yeah.
Or I think it's also linguistic in part. I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to find a way out of it, because it is kind of like the Matrix, but it's just a lot more abstract. It's really difficult for me to wrap my head around what it is and how to get out of it.
Again, it's personal perception, personal belief, is that we can't. We just have to accept it. And the moment we accept it and let go of trying to understand and control it, because by trying to understand it, you're actually trying to control it. You're actually trying to control your your place in it, in the system, or you are the system, and you're trying to control the external. Whereas, again, this is just me and the experience that I've done, I guess, is that I feel the moment that I just accept it and let it go and go, you know what, this is what it is. This is reality in whatever form it takes. What do I do with that? What do I do with that? Do I let it overwhelm me, or do I just get on with it? And everyone's different, and again, and in my opinion, there's no necessarily right or wrong. It's just different perceptions. Again, this is one of the things that I've talked about before, where I don't often we use good or bad, or good and evil, or right and wrong in completely the wrong contexts. Like, because things just often are. They just are things. It's us that react to them. It's us that defines whether something is a certain way. And so with the likes of confidence, as much as I used to hate this term, the fake it till you make it is often what I've used. The repetition, like, that I am good enough. I am a good person. I am lovely. I am worthy of existence. I have something to give. And it's just me. It doesn't have to be a talent or a skill or a whatever. It's just me. And I think every human being is exactly the same, but we don't realize it. We don't realize that just being us, just having this conversation that we have, is beautiful the way it is. We don't need excess amount of knowledge about a thing. We don't need to be a master of our art. We just are who we are. And that, to me, helped free me and give me confidence. That helped me to be like, okay, that's cool. But again, it took lots of repetition. It took lots of, again, my own style of cognitive behavioral therapy and different therapies. And I guess experimentation.
So you've built a world, that you described, and that is also a belief. It is, but that's really interesting. I'm not. This is not criticism. This is just an observation.
Observe away.
It seems you said there's no way out of the illusory world, but you're creating your own.
Yeah.
And I'll just call it illusion as well, because it's not objective.
Yeah, it's all.
But it seems like you're saying there is no objective world. You're always in some believed world, and it's up to you to decide whether you make your own or it is given to you by someone else.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Like, and the great thing about the universe and life or reality or whatever, there's paradoxes, there's contradictions, there's juxtaposition, and part of the confidence I've gained is accepting all that. It's accepting it, because I've spent so much of my life trying to figure it out, to be like, how could this exist and this exist, or how does that work and that work? How can these things not cancel each other out almost? Like we talked about at the start, I think, or just before we logged on, about hope and disappointment. Like, what is up with hope and disappointment? It makes no sense to me if I overthink it. So you have hope. So you go, I want to do that. I hope that I can sell some books or sell music or sell art. And so I go and do the thing, and I don't sell it, or it doesn't go the way I perceive it, the success. And suddenly I'm disappointed and I hate myself and I want to die or don't want to exist. And like, how can something be that way and then suddenly be this way? And so in my head, I have to like, okay, well, they both exist. They're not opposites. They're the same thing. The whole yin and yang symbol. And now it's my choice how I respond to it. Do I keep hoping, and every time I feel disappointed, go change the reality or perceived reality and go, that's just a cultural response or a chemical response or a perceived response, and go, no, I choose not to let that like be part of my system. And over time, it gets less and less and less. Like, the more I do things, the more I focus on that hope and being like, cool, I hope for that. And then if it doesn't go the way I planned, meh, whatever. Like that's become my way of doing things. It's not like, oh, disappointed, that's rubbish. It's okay, cool, that was an experience. Next thing. The next thing to hope for, next thing to try. And that was one of the biggest changes, I think, where it came to paradox and contradictions and things that don't I guess opposites, things that are opposite.
You're starting to sound like some of the spiritual teachers that I follow online.
Yeah.
And me, and I'm sounding like the audience that they keep talking to about the same topics, which are and it seems to be just our culture that we believe that we need to have control over what happens. We need to make an expectation in our mind, do something that takes effort, and then it needs to come about the way we expect it to. And then we feel like we're a good person or valuable or worthy, like you say.
And it often can be perceived as a giving up mentality. It can be perceived as like, oh, but you're not trying to do things. You're letting things wash over you. You're a defeatist. And to me, it's the opposite, because you're still, well, I guess it depends on what you do with it. If you do just sit back and do nothing with it, then you've kind of, sure, if you're happy doing that, that's your choice. But you can use these things to do. You can create this bubble, this world around you, like I feel I have, that you've talked about, and the energy, and then just bit by bit, not be concerned with timing, not be concerned with when I achieve something or how I achieve it. I just do it. If I have an idea, okay, well, let's go talk to this person over here about this thing, and that might open a door to something else, or try this thing. But again, it's the intent, it's the reaction to the outcome, I guess, that defines this, I guess, guru mentality, or I call it like serenity or at peace. Like you're at peace with whatever happens to you. I think that builds. I think that's confidence to me, is that no matter what happens to you, you can still love yourself and be happy with yourself and your circumstance.
I don't think confidence is something that you need to create or build or add to what you are. I believe it is a natural consequence of being free of inner conflict.
Nice. That's well said. Yeah.
And I picked up on something else you said. You sometimes have an idea to do something. Now, what does that mean? Well, where does the idea come from?
Is that a rhetorical question or an actual question?
No. This is
actual question.
This reminds me of something that I hear from
I guess motivations, my wants, my desires internally, ultimately. So that idea will stem for me from, again, the desire to do some good in the world. Again, intention. What's my intention? And the idea often resolves around trying to gain success in our capitalistic world. Because then with that success, I can do more of the perceived good, or help people in the way that they might need help, etc. That's what will lead to that.
I'll tell you what I was getting at. Because I believe that for a lot of people, it is easier to achieve this serene state and confident state than for me. Naturally, I think some have that gift. You said you had to work at it too, but it's relative.
Yeah.
What was I getting at? And having an idea is a very intuitive thing. And what is intuition? That's a big question, and I love it. I love exploring that question. And something that I've heard from several spiritual teachers is that there are basically two levels. The lower level is where people just keep exchanging information. They keep recycling it. Nothing new ever happens. There's nothing new under the sun. And just when someone says something clever, it's because they heard it somewhere else. And then there is a higher level that I don't know what it's made of. Some people might say it's God or angels or the universe. And if you, on the lower level, have a connection to that higher level, then you will sometimes get a download. That's what some call it.
Yeah.
You will be inspired. And this might be one of the many sources of intuition that something new enters the lower level, this dirty earth. If you want to think of it as a clean heaven and a dirty earth, sometimes there's a bit of light that shines down to the earth, and then someone is prepared and receives it and will hopefully do good things with it. And that's just something you reminded me of when you said, I get an idea to do something.
Yeah.
It's
It's
very
interesting the perceptions, because even in that metaphor that you used, or similarly, or whatever, is that I see it as we already have it inside of us, and we have to tap into it, and it beams out of us like light. We are the light, and it comes out of us, and that we shine this beauty, and yeah, that
different spatial relations.
it's all the same thing. It's just it's all the same thing ultimately, but it's like it's interesting comparisons.
Some Indians say all you need to do is connect your heart with your head, but there's something in between stopping that signal.
Yeah.
There are many ways
to describe. It's cool. I love it.
Yeah. But my problem is always intellectualization.
Yes.
Just like in this discussion, I take what we're experiencing and what you're reporting, and I put it into logical, conceptual form, because that is what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And I think that is also what is hindering me of making progress.
It's a beautiful foundation, but yes, we can overthink things. And that's that was one of my biggest struggles, is to just go out and do. Because like we are a consciousness, we are a brain, a mind, a soul, whatever you want to call it. And yes, there are emotional responses in there as well. But what is it? If I guess this is going to again grabbing on things I don't know a huge amount, but I think if the heart dies, the brain's still technically living for a quite like for like a little while afterwards. It's still firing off stuff. It's still going. So there's stuff in there that I think is more the priority. The way I approach this was just, again, this is my perception, it's my opinion, is that if we lead with emotional responses and then try and think of it logically, I've tried that and it doesn't work for me. Maybe it works for others, but I've perceived it with people around me that it doesn't, it just causes anger. It ends up just causing passionate responses, reactive responses that cause a cycle of unhappiness. But if we then try and experience it, like, I guess experience both things, but prioritize the logic and the analysis, and then experience the emotion more, like let yourself feel it more. Personally, that has now in the last sort of 5 years worked so much better for me. And like, I think you're still on that journey, and when we're all still on the journey, technically, I'm not, like, it's not. I'm sure maybe in 5 years' time I may change my opinion. Who knows? Like, again, this is the great thing about life, is that it's relative to what you're going with at any given time. But the growth that we're both making, I believe is leading to confidence. Like, this gives me confidence as well. Like, again, it's all part of like things that give me confidence. Being able to chat to you and be open about things in an intellectual way and spiritual way and emotional way. Fills me. It's, I guess, practice of being confident. That, again, I talked about it earlier, the fake it till you make it. If you practice going out and doing things in a way that pushes the struggles that we have with, anxieties and worries, then it'll become second nature almost over time.
leaving that comfort zone can be more difficult for some people than others. I mentioned before, and I want to repeat it every episode, basically. That the realm that you create for yourself of what is possible and what is okay to do is so limiting. But it is your identity, and identity, and when losing an identity is like losing an existence and dying, and therefore going outside of that realm is, in my experience at least, it triggers a fear of death. It's not just uncomfortable, it is actually deathly dangerous to me, perception wise. And so that makes it more difficult. That slows me down a lot in my effort to do that, to practice confidence. It pays off. It pays off if I actually do it.
You make a very valid and important point there about the difficulty of it. Again, we can talk about it as till the cows come home, or whatever that phrase is, but the reality is, it is like a death. Yeah, like I do see myself. I often feel like I've lived many lifetimes in my 35 years. Like I feel like I've had many lifetimes, and because I've had to let go of that version of Stephen and rebuild with taking what I want to from that version, again, maybe subconsciously, and then moving forward with the new version of Stephen. But ultimately, it's all the same Stephen, in my opinion. It's all part of a whole, but it's just changing and bringing in new things, putting in new things, taking away some things. But I guess taking it away from being the focus. They're still in me. They're still part of me. Like again, doubts, fears, anxieties, it's all still there. It's just not the focus. It doesn't control, like doesn't rise to the surface. To use, again, trying to use metaphors and similes in a way to describe it. And so yeah, the fear of that is horrific. And so no, you make a very good point there that taking those steps, you have to accept a death.
Yeah.
Like you do. And that's intense. Like, because it involves your mortality, both. Yeah, I guess your personality's mortality, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I can identify with that as well. Having several chapters of your life and drastic changes happening in between, usually connected with a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But also great rewards.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I always wanted to stay young. I mean, not in the sense of pretty and healthy, but like Peter Pan. And maybe I never understood why, and I'm only slowly understanding why, but maybe this is one of the reasons. Maybe I looked at adults and thought, oh, they have so many problems. They have to go through so much in order to change and improve themselves. And for me, it seems a lot easier. And I just want to stay this way. I don't want to go through all those transitions.
Yeah. Change is tough. Like again, the animal kingdom has a lot of great symbolism that can be used. And again, the caterpillar, metamorphosis, chrysalis, the butterfly. But it's constantly a cycle where the butterfly for us has to then become a caterpillar again and go through the same like cycles where we don't just do it once. We're not like, oh, I'm a little caterpillar, oh, I'm change, and oh, I'm a butterfly, there we go, done. That would be nice. But no, it's a constant cycle of that where we have to go through a painful process. Because it is agony, it's torment, it's trauma. But again, the hope and the outcome, as you say, is better. Like my goal in life, again, it depends on your goal ultimately. My goal in life is to be happy. And that sounds very like tiny, like it's like define happiness and then blah blah blah. There's a whole bunch of things you can go down. But I guess it's more, again, like serenity. It's no matter in what situation that occurs to me in my life, will I ultimately accept it and be happy about it? And not happy in the sense of like, oh, my whole family's died. I'm happy they're dead. That's not what I mean, obviously. I mean, just be like, okay, this is what is happening. I choose to dwell in and experience the pain for a while, for whatever period of time I want, and then I will go back to, trying to, I guess, have the substance that I want, whatever I choose that to be. And I feel I'm close. I feel like I'm there in many ways. But again, that's taking a lot of extreme situations to help that occur. And it's, again, comfort zone. Push myself out there to gain the confidence. Again, I guess, it's a verb in a way, I think.
Mhm.
You have to do the action to build up the confidence. And what's tough is that it can be smashed so quickly and so easily. That's what's difficult at times. Is that all these, I was talking about something like this one the other day, about how, I guess, perceived negative, or I guess it's constructive and destructive habits or behaviors.
Mhm.
And destructive ones seem to just so easily establish themselves in our brains. Bam, it's there, and now we're stuck doing something that's destructive or painful or difficult. And yet, like, constructive habits, like having confidence and going out there and into the world and being like, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm okay. Like, yeah, all it can take is one person to say something or do something, and suddenly it's gone. Like, it's like the confidence is like, we're back to the destructive mentality of withdrawing and like being afraid. And it seems to take a unequal amount of energy to maintain and exercise and build up the constructive habits and behaviors than it does to actually have a destructive one. And that's where, looping back to the start, I guess, knowing ourselves and having faith within ourselves, and belief of ourselves, that we can do this, that we can find happiness, that we can, and by saying it and believing it, it will happen. That's what's interesting. Don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I also have one last thought I want to share. So many words in this area begin with self, like self-belief and self-confidence, and how you treat yourself, how you perceive yourself, because the inside world is what creates the outside world. So many people believe they're a victim of outside circumstance, and that is true if you let it get to that state. But I want to stop attempting to change my circumstances and rather understand myself more. This is why it's so important to know yourself. Who am I?
Yeah.
So that I am. I want to use the word control again, so that I'm in control of my inner self. But
It still works. It's still no. Even though, again, I don't mean to like make that sound like a negative earlier on. Having control over who we are is important. It's important.
Yeah,
because it's a choice. It's a choice to, like, we control that outcome, and that is confidence as well. Again, looping it back to what we're talking about.
I want that freedom,
yeah.
so that when I choose to be happy, I am happy, and there's no huge amount of unprocessed emotions that I need to go through first.
You determine the outcome. Again, you control the outcome. You're in charge. That kind of, yeah. Again, that is healthy. That is good. That is not. And again, my beliefs are that is good. But again, along the process, being kind to ourselves. That's one that my mum used to always say, and one that people always said to me, is that you're so critical on yourself. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And I think that we can all be a bit more kinder to ourselves in these processes. And I think learning to love all aspects to ourselves, because again, the perception is that some of these things are, again, destructive or constructive. Even that perception can lead to a being hard on ourselves when we don't need to be. And yeah, I think that my personal belief is that the start of confidence, the start of change, and the start of all these different perceptions is learning to just love ourselves for who we are and accept ourselves for who we are. Because the moment you're critical, then that causes pain and unnecessary stuff. Like it's not needed. It's not needed.
And to bring it back to what we said in the beginning about influencers, you know, people online who seem so confident, and they might be or not, they often show off their wealth, and their fame, and then we become jealous, or you know, we want that. But that's the wrong strategy, because that is trying to change your circumstances without changing your inner world first. And so I've been shifting my focus away from the results of confidence to confidence. I want to work on my inner self first, and then the outer rewards will come automatically. I'm told that, you know, when you're in that state, you metaphorically need the power of your pinky in order to cover your needs for survival.
Yeah.
You know, some people struggle their whole life just to pay the basic costs of survival. And other people who have made that progress with working on themselves, it's the easiest thing, and they're totally beyond that and working on something very different. And that's something I would like to get to, but it starts on the inside.
It does. Yep. It starts with us. Who am I? As you said a few minutes ago. You mentioned it again, title of our podcast. And we hope that you all that we all continue to learn together. And because again, it is a process that cannot just be done by ourselves. Like, I don't believe we can just do it ourselves. I think it requires us to find the right people that we can connect with and share, like we are with this podcast, our vulnerabilities, our experiences, and that will help us to, again, gain confidence, to realize that we are good people, and also to not put so much pressure on ourselves. Change will come in time as we just do it little by little. Because we've been doing this podcast for how long now? Like, I think a year or two?
Almost 4 years, I think.
Oh, 4. Well, there you go. Like, wow. Like, and again, it's lovely to see that, again, as each year goes on, we are making, there may not be any visible sign of success sometimes, but there is just a beautiful, in my opinion, a beautiful connection and knowledge that we are doing the good for ourselves, if nothing else.